There is a scene in a television episode that aired on February 4th, 1980, that people who watched it as children have never forgotten. The Walnut Grove School for the Blind is on fire. A young woman named Alice Garvey races inside because there are children who cannot find their way out. She finds a baby, the infant son of Mary Ingalls. She carries him to an upstairs window, trying to break through to safety. The window won't break. She pushes harder. She tries again. She and the baby never make it out. It is one of the most haunting, most memorable, most genuinely distressing scenes in the history of American family television. And the woman who played it, who brought Alice Garvey to life for 3 seasons, who made her so warm and so specific, and so genuinely loved that her death left a mark on an entire generation of viewers, described the experience of filming it in exactly the way you'd hope she would. "At least I went out with a roar," she said, "and not a whimper." Hersha Parady, born Betty Sandhoff in Berea, Ohio, on May 25, 1945, died August 23, 2023, in Norfolk, Virginia, at the home of her son Jonathan, after a battle with a brain tumor. She was 78 years old. This is her story. Betty Sandhoff grew up in Berea, Ohio, a small suburb of Cleveland, the kind of Midwestern American town where the idea of becoming an actress might have seemed like something that happened to other people in other places. But Betty started acting at 14 years old, in Cleveland area theatrical productions, and from the beginning it was not a hobby. It was a calling. She attended Berea High School. She learned her craft in community and regional theater. And then, at some point in the early 1970s, she made the decision that defines a generation of aspiring performers. She moved west, to Los Angeles, to try. Before Hollywood found her, she had already done something remarkable on the stage. She landed a role opposite Jon Voight, Will Cumbius. This was after Voight's Oscar-nominated performance in Midnight Cowboy, when he was one of the most discussed actors in American cinema, in a national touring production of A Streetcar Named Desire. That is not a small credit for a young actress from Ohio. That is the kind of thing you put in the first paragraph of a biography. She began appearing on television in the early 1970s. Bearcats, her first television credit in 1971, then Mannix, then The Waltons. Guest roles, the kind that most working actors spend entire careers accumulating, building the craft and the credits and the professional reputation that eventually leads to the role that changes everything. She was actually considered for the role of Caroline Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie before Karen Grassel was cast. The show was being assembled and the people putting it together saw something in her. She didn't get that particular role. But she appeared on the show anyway, in a 1976 third-season episode called Journey in the Spring as Eliza Ann Ingalls, Charles Ingalls' sister-in-law. And then, a year later, the phone rang again. The story of how Hersha Parady came to be cast as Alice Garvey is one of those serendipitous Hollywood moments that sounds slightly too good to be true, but is apparently exactly what happened. She was starring in a play and used Borgadalism, portraying Anne Hathaway, the wife of William Shakespeare. 2 of her future Little House on the Prairie co-stars, Richard Bull, Nels Oleson, and Catherine Scotty McGregor, Mrs. Oleson, came to see the performance. They were impressed enough by what they saw that they brought her to the attention of the show's producers. She was cast as Alice Garvey, the schoolteacher wife of Jonathan Garvey, a new character being introduced for the 4th season alongside Merlin Olsen, the former NFL star turned actor who would play her husband. Together, Parady and Olsen debuted in the season 4 premiere, Cast-Offs, in September 1977. Alice Garvey was, from the beginning, a specific and fully realized character, rather than a generic supporting presence. She was the kind of teacher who actually caught Nellie Oleson trying to cheat on an exam, and handled it with the specific combination of firmness and fairness that makes a great fictional educator as compelling as a great real one. She was warm but not soft. She was principled in a way that felt earned rather than prescribed. She had opinions, and she expressed them. She played the role across 35 episodes over 3 seasons, from 1977 to 1980. She became part of the fabric of Walnut Grove. She became, for the children watching at home, one of those television characters who felt like someone they actually knew. And then came February 4th, 1980. May We Make Them Proud was broadcast as a 2-hour sweeps period episode, the kind of event television that the major networks deployed when they needed maximum viewership during the rating periods that determined advertising rates. Michael Landon, who created and starred in Little House on the Prairie, understood how to construct a moment of genuine dramatic power, and the fire at the School for the Blind was exactly that. Alice Garvey's death was not casual. It was deliberate, structural, and devastating. She died as she lived, trying to help, running toward danger rather than away from it, unwilling to leave while there were still people who needed her. The character's death was a logical extension of who she was, but the filming of it became its own complicated story. There is a piece of Little House on the Prairie mythology that has circulated for decades, the claim that Michael Landon deliberately replaced the breakaway window, the specially rigged glass designed to shatter easily for safety, with a real sturdy window, as a practical joke on Parady. The version of the story that has traveled farthest says that Landon found it funny when Parady's increasingly desperate attempts to break through the window resulted in an image that suggested she was using the infant in her arms as a battering ram. Parady herself addressed this in an interview for the Little House on the Prairie Memories tribute site, and her account is both specific and gloriously funny about a situation that was genuinely dangerous. "They did not rig the windows to break easily," she said, "and I'm not, as Michael Landon pointed out a lot, a meek, delicate woman, so when I try to bust something, I usually succeed." She said it was Landon himself who first observed that it looked like she was trying to use the baby as a battering ram to bust the window. "Emily," she added, with the characteristic humor that everyone who knew her seems to have remarked upon, "so because they'd forgotten to break away the windows, I was determined to get out whatever the cost. In spite of the impending doom it would bring, at least I went out with a roar and not a whimper. At least I went out with a roar." She said that, about her own character's death, about a scene that traumatized an entire generation of children who watched it, with warmth, with humor, and with what sounds like genuine pride that the moment had been as powerful as it was. After Little House on the Prairie, Hersha Parady continued working. She appeared in Raw Courage in 1984, in The Break in 1995, in a handful of television guest roles across the 1980s and 1990s. Unsolved Mysteries, Second Noah, CBS Afternoon Playhouse. And then, in 1997, came perhaps the most charming piece of casting symmetry in her career, Kenan and Kel. The beloved Nickelodeon sketch comedy starring Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell needed a principal for their school. They cast Hersha Parady as Principal Dimly. The symmetry is almost too perfect. Alice Garvey was a school teacher who caught Nellie Oleson cheating on an exam. Principal Dimly is an authority figure who discovers Kenan Thompson's doodle of her in his notebook, captioned, "Principal Dimwit." 17 years apart, two completely different genres. Two completely different audiences, the same essential dynamic, a woman of institutional authority encountering a young person doing something they shouldn't, and handling it with the specific combination of authority and underlying warmth that Hersha Parady apparently brought to every role she ever played. The connection between Alice Garvey and Principal Dimly was not lost on her. She was, by any measure, a woman who understood that the roles she played said something consistent about who she was. Her personal life was rich with its own history. She was married to John Peverall Salih Chair, a film producer who won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1979 as a producer of The Deer Hunter. Their son, Jonathan Peverall, was her primary caregiver in her final chapter, the person who set up the GoFundMe to help with her medical expenses and who had her at his home in Norfolk, Virginia, when she died. Jonathan described his mother's illness in the GoFundMe with the specific heartbreak of a child watching a parent fade. The brain tumor meningioma had robbed her of her strength, her memory, and sadly, her vibrant personality. She had been on a ventilator in the ICU in her final days. Her son remained hopeful and asked those following along to remain hopeful too. She died on August 23, 2023. Jonathan was with her. When news of Hersha Parady's death was announced, the response from the Little House on the Prairie community was immediate and genuine. Alison Arngrim, who played Nellie Oleson, the girl Alice Garvey caught cheating on her exam, posted on Facebook, "Our wild, untamable, talented Hersha has left us. Rest in power." Wild, untamable, talented. 3 words chosen by someone who actually knew her. Not beloved or kind or any of the other polished language of celebrity obituaries. Wild and untamable lines, words that speak to the specific quality of energy she brought to a room, the quality that had been visible in her playing of Alice Garvey all along, the quality that made her going out with a roar feel not like bravado, but like simple, accurate self-description. The official Little House on the Prairie social media presence posted its own tribute. The show that had employed her, the character she had inhabited for 3 seasons, the world she had been part of for 4 decades in the memory of its fans, all of it acknowledged her passing with genuine warmth. Her son's GoFundMe had exceeded its $20,000 goal, reaching $21,385 from fans and community members who had wanted to help. That number is not a celebrity-level outpouring. It is the specific, human-scale generosity of people who loved a character that a woman named Betty Sandhoff from Berea, Ohio, had made real enough to love. She is survived by Jonathan and his children, Pulisorkings, her grandchildren Abigail, John, and Yoon, and by her siblings Patty, Kenny, and Bobby. Here is what I find most moving about the Hersha Parady story. She was not a household name. She is not someone whose face is on a postage stamp or whose career launched 1,000 think pieces. She was a character actress, someone who worked consistently and professionally for over 50 years in an industry that is not designed to sustain the careers of people who don't become stars. And she left behind something genuinely indelible, a scene that people who watched it in 1980 can still describe in detail. A character who felt real enough to grieve, a performance of someone's death that was so well acted and so physically committed to a fewer four hellos, so roar rather than whimper, that it remains, more than 40 years later, one of the most discussed moments in a show that ran for 9 seasons and produced hundreds of memorable episodes. She started acting at 14 in Cleveland. She made her way to Los Angeles and earned her craft through guest roles in stage productions and a touring company opposite Jon Voight. She was almost Caroline Ingalls. She became Alice Garvey instead. She went out with a roar. Betty Sandhoff from Berea, Ohio. Hersha Parady to the world. Alice Garvey to anyone who ever watched Little House on the Prairie and felt the specific grief of a character well-loved and suddenly permanently gone. Rest in power, Hersha. You earned every word of it. If Alice Garvey's story meant something to you growing up, drop a comment. What do you remember most about her time on Little House? Take care of each other. I'll see you in the next one.